This is Dr. John Green, a Senior Lecturer in Marine Biology, and you're listening to the Academy's Developing Practice podcast.
Hello and welcome to the next episode of the University of Liverpool Academy's Developing Practice podcast. Today, myself, Matthew Davies, an organisational developer, and Alex Owen, a senior academic developer, sat down with Jonathan Green. We had a really good conversation about how colleagues in the School of Environmental Sciences are supporting students on programmes to develop as global citizens. We hope you enjoy our chat.
John, we're really pleased to be speaking to you today and hearing about some of your work to support students to develop their understanding of global citizenship. But before we hear about that, could you start by telling us a bit about your professional background and the role that you're in today at the university?
Sure, thanks, and it's nice to be here talking about this today as well. I've been at University of Liverpool since 2008, and I'm now a Senior Lecturer in Marine Biology. Initially, we were in the School of Biological Sciences and now in the School of Environmental Sciences. And I've been involved with these international projects pretty much since arriving at the university.
Brilliant. And is marine biology something that you've always been interested in? Is that, you started with your undergraduate degree and moved through to that, or have you come to it a bit later?
Very much by chance, really. So I studied zoology as an undergraduate and then spent some time out and was thinking about projects and PhDs to follow. I was always interested in adventure, and I got interested in travelling and working in Antarctica, and I did a PhD on penguins.
Oh wow, cool. Which
got me into marine birds, and that's still my research area now, more than 20 years later. And when I did a couple of postdocs, including in Australia, and then I was looking for permanent roles, and the role in marine biology was the one here in Liverpool that I ended up with. And so my interests have kind of broadened more widely into marine science in general. And I worked as the program director for several years, and I'm currently the program director for environmental science.
Great.
So, over a number of years, you've supported your undergraduate students to understand the course content, as well as to develop their understanding of global citizenship by supporting them to undertake overseas independent study visits. Can you tell us a little bit more about them?
Yes, these visits were in existence when I first came here. I think they've been doing them for 2 or 3 years, and now for more than 10 years since. And the aim of the visits is to experience an aspect of their studies that they would find interesting or stimulating or may link to future employment for them, but to do that in an overseas setting. So it kind of has 2 main areas of value. One is it helps them to follow an area of interest that we might not necessarily be able to support here in Liverpool. We're always limited by the staff's research interests and experiences. So they get to meet new people outside of that. And with the whole world on offer, they're not limited in where they can go and what they can do. So we hope that these trips are driven by their interests and what we call the purpose of the visit. And then by adding an international dimension, they get to experience our field in another country. Some of the issues they're interested in are really specific to other countries. And I think they get another perspective on how people live, work, study overseas and see for themselves some of the things we may have talked about in lectures and other sessions back here in Liverpool.
Great. So, looking at some of the research on that, I think it's Clamping reports and her work that there's often mixed access or opportunity for international overseas visits. But this isn't the case for your students, is it? All students have access to this.
That's correct. It's a compulsory element. All students go, without exception. Occasionally students have had illness or particular personal circumstances where we've come up with something else. So the odd student has stayed in the UK. But the aim is for every student to go, and we've had the vast majority of students go. We have offered financial support over the years for this, and some is in place at the moment. And what we say is, because you can go anywhere, any student should be able to, with a bit of planning, get to across to Ireland or to Europe, to the Netherlands, somewhere like that, stay for a week, do what they need to do and come back. So that's the kind of bare minimum.
Right.
Whereas other students who are able to bring other resources or plan differently or really put a lot of thought into who their hosts are, they're able to stay for much longer, weeks, months, sometimes the whole summer.
Right, okay, all across the globe then?
Yeah, we've had students, we have a lot in Europe obviously, but we've had students in South Africa, all across Asia, down to Australia, and quite a few in North America, and 1 or 2 in South America, and a few in Central America as well. We say we've been to every continent except Antarctica, but they go in the summer, and Antarctica is not very hospitable in our summer.
Right.
So, but yeah, all over the globe.
Great, and I guess that's something that's really attractive to students. Do you find that they join the course because of that attractive element?
That's a great question. It's actually been, I think, one of our challenges is actually promoting the value of this trip.
Right.
So other institutions and even other parts of our school offer an overseas field course. So 2 weeks in exotic, sunny, interesting location. And that's quite an easy concept to sell to people. And many programs in our sector have that offer, and you can put it on a poster. This, I think, has much greater value to students. I think they learn a lot more from it. I think they get a lot from it. But it's slightly more difficult concept to get over to them quickly at an open day or on our website, or for example. So I do think there's a lot to learn from it. And I hope that students do choose us on that basis. But we often have to have perhaps a conversation about it at an open day rather than a quick slide and a kind of headline on the website.
Poster.
So
you need to explain it a bit more.
We do, and we've worked on this, and we've thought about this, and we've increased its prominence in our promotional material. But it is a slight challenge getting that idea over to them.
Yeah. So that's one of the key challenges. Have you come up across any of the other challenges facing students with overseas study visits?
I think when we tell students about it, they can be initially daunted because we do encourage them to organise them independently. They're not laid out for them. And when I arrived and I was told that students do these visits, I couldn't quite believe that every student manages to sort something out. But so they have the same feeling when it's first presented to them. So we have a fairly kind of lengthy and extensive program of support for them to help them find their trip and make it valuable and get going.
Yeah, I think lots of the literature points to that. So Dunlap and MAP's research very much talks about overseas study visits being successful as long as you do that work back at the university first to prepare the students for what's going to happen overseas. Have you found that yourself?
Absolutely. So these trips take place in the summer between year 2 and year 3, and the preparation starts in November the previous year. They've known about it since the start of the program, and we'll remind them. We'll tell them in Welcome Week and at the start of year 2. But the kind of formal program that Rachel Jeffries now leads, that starts in November of year 2, and we have now a fairly well-defined series of seminars supported by tutorials and quite a lot of paperwork to fill in to get these going. But I also think that the longer we've been doing them, the easier it's got, because there is momentum and we share the information with the current students about where previous students have been. So every year that we can add new destinations or ideas or types of trip onto that list, the more that they get their inspiration, and they can follow other students, that's fine. But it just gives them an idea of the kind of places students have gone.
Yeah.
So the onus is on the student to organise their own study visit?
Yes, very much so. I think with just a few exceptions of students who might be finding it particularly challenging or who've tried really hard to contact hosts but not made any real progress, then we might use our contacts and make an approach on the student's behalf. But that's very much the exception.
Right.
And we certainly share our contacts, that we have among the staff.
Yeah.
If a student is interested in marine birds, which is my area, then I'll give them a list of people to contact who I think might be friendlies. But I won't do that for them. I'll say to mention my name, and my colleagues would do the same. But we very much push them to do that. So that's a real, very authentic activity for them. It's a real workplace thing to do, to start building up a network of contacts.
Yeah.
Cold calls, effectively.
Yeah, it's a development activity in itself for them to actually to organise that, to get on the phone and start to make those plans.
And that's part of the learning. And you mentioned the phone is interesting because students are very reluctant to actually phone people.
Yeah.
So we say, of course, start by email because that's kind of polite and formal. But lots of academics and researchers and other people don't respond to emails, especially cold, random emails. Or sometimes they might respond once and the trail goes a bit cold. And we'll say, get on the phone, pick up the phone, call from our office if you make an international call. That's fine. But they can be reluctant to do that, even though it's obviously very effective. Yeah. So we come up against this every year. Say ultimately we're successful, but I think that is part of the learning about taking a brave step, big step to contact someone you've never contacted before.
Definitely. So you've obviously got a database built up now. It's quite a significant database, and obviously the students are using that. Have you found anybody's really sort of trailblazed and done something recently which is, off the books, as it were?
Well, there's definitely some trips which stand out. There are some easy options that you can take in our field, and we sometimes have years where many students do that, and we think, oh, maybe this isn't doing what we want it to do if they're just all signing up for these expensive kind of volunteering holidays. But then we're always surprised the next year by students finding interesting individuals from government departments to work with who give up their time, or they had a student over in Ireland who found an academic who had a really interesting research project, and they helped their PhD student gather data. They arrived in Ireland and they were out on a boat the next day towing a net around, grabbing samples, and just really fun activities and things that related to things we do here but might not necessarily be able to. And there's a couple of individuals for whom you can see it completely change their direction of what they were thinking about. I think of one individual who'd come from a non-traditional background and was quite unsure of themselves, even though they were a good student. And they went on a placement with Greenpeace in their EU office in Brussels, and they stayed there for several weeks, maybe a couple of months, and had an amazing time, learned a huge amount, and it completely changed that person's direction.
Okay.
It altered what they did then in their project when they came back in the third year, and then they went on to study masters in that field around kind of policy, international relations, shaping change through science, and she now has a job in that field. And it was clearly inspirational for her to do that. Like it.
Yeah, obviously made a big difference in that person's life.
Yeah. Some people just kind of keep going where they're going. A lot of people use it to do their dive training. Obviously in our field, diving is important to some people and some aspects of marine biology. Not everyone. We don't offer it here as part of the program. You can do it in the club, but not through the university, or through the university club, but not through the school. So they take a chance to go and learn to dive in Thailand or Philippines or somewhere like that, and that's a good place to do it, and that's a good thing that they can then also have on their CV, as well as seeing the environmental challenges or the work that some organisations are doing around diving and research projects on that topic.
It sounds amazing. It makes me want to be like in my 20s again and or pick a different career.
Well, what's it we do? Mature students are not unusual in our program. I think partly because of that. It's a passion-driven subject, and some people they do something else for a few years and they think actually this is what I always wanted to do, and then come back. So I haven't had any in the last couple of years, but over the years we've had several mature students. Yeah. So it's not too late. You come and join us.
Great, good.
Recruit him.
I'm in. The other part of it, it's not just like diving in the Philippines and things like that. It really does sound like the students really grow and develop just in that short time when they're on that visit. I think that's the bit that also is really appealing as well. Like you've mentioned that some people come back and they're almost different people.
Yeah, I think so. And one way we have of kind of informally assessing that is, well, there's two ways. One is if I'm writing a reference for someone, I'll often ask them to send me their application to help me write a reference. And I think the frequency with which people mention these study visits and what they gain from that and how that's helping them to apply for a master's program or a PhD or a job in our sector or even outside of our sector, I think is really interesting. And you can see that coming back again and again. And then also we sometimes gather kind of testimonials for use in recruitment, like where are they now type activities. And we'll ask them, what did you do in your studies that helped you get this job? And they'll specifically reference their visits. Yeah. And we've had a small number of students who go on to actually even work, be employed by the people they did their study visit with. So the one that springs to mind is a young woman working for a research organisation in South Africa, looking at shark conservation, great white shark conservation, and that's also centred around ecotourism. They do this shark cage diving. I don't know if you've seen that. Yeah. That helps fund the research, and she's down there doing that now, which is pretty great outcome for her. Definitely. And again, looks good for our graduates. Yeah. But students coming in and what they might do after graduation.
Brilliant. I think that's something that really interests me about this is those kind of outcomes for the students. Obviously, it enhances their understanding of the course content, that goes without saying. But actually engaging in a study visit that really supports them to, have that global perspective, the cultural sensitivity, gaining confidence, all of those things that actually we can't really create easily in a classroom. It's that kind of softer side of enhancing the student experience.
Yeah, I agree. And to me, it's important that these are activities that they couldn't just do in the UK. And in particular, the way that we assess it, there's an element where we ensure that their experience overseas is explicitly brought into that as well, just to make them reflect on that and think about where they've been. So the assessment comes in two parts. The main part is a briefing note. I can talk about that in a minute. But with regards to the kind of global citizenship, we have an element called a cultural report. And it can be a flexible format, and they have to reflect on the place that they've been in, the people, the lifestyle, culture, environmental problems, food, traditions, anything they like really. And it's a flexible format, so they can submit like a diary, a scrapbook.
You show me some of those. They're beautiful. They're
some
really
of them
are
extraordinary.
Yeah.
Posters, leaflets, videos, audio diary, whatever they want, as long as they are reflecting on where they've been rather than just what they've done.
Great. So we could possibly hear some podcasts from students at some point on their experiences of their study visits.
For sure, yeah. I would imagine that would be possible as well. We can talk to them and see if they would get involved with that. But
I'm just thinking they could record their own when they're out there, and then they could submit that for their submission.
Absolutely, that would be completely acceptable. Right, it'd be good. Right. And it's not worth a huge amount of the module. It's one of the few things I ever give 100% for when I'm marking, because you can just tell someone has put a great deal of effort in and really taken the time to think about where they are. And who they're with.
And what a lovely thing to create, which may then become part of a portfolio for an application for a job. It's nice to have that tangible output from the experience.
I think so, and this it satisfies so many kind of objectives here. The other assessment is a briefing note, so it's written in a particular style. So a briefing note for an MP or another member of another parliament, and there's a format to follow. There's information online about that. And the idea is to get over the topic that they've been studying on their visit, a brief summary of the state of the art of that, and what can we learn for UK government or Scottish government or Welsh government from activities and work going on overseas. So there's explicitly bringing in what they've learned, but bringing it back to UK context as well to make it relevant. And I say the briefing note concept is not something they've done before, but it's very much an authentic assessment. And then both doing that and the whole activity is challenging. So we had a meeting with some employers a couple of years ago, and I said, what can we be doing, getting the students to do is useful to you guys? And they said, what we need are students who are comfortable outside of their comfort zone. That's maybe not the best way to phrase it. There's students who are not going to panic when they're put outside of their comfort zone. So when they're confronted with a new challenge that they might not have seen before, what are they going to do? Are they going to engage with it, give it a good crack, or are they going to panic and not be able to do it or not want to do it? So organising the trip is very much outside of the comfort zone. Most of them will never have done anything like that. Then they're out there, usually on their own, or off maybe with another student. And then when they come back, they have this assessment task to do, which is new as well. So they find it daunting, but we say to them, there's a lot to be gained from this, and we put in the support to try and knock the edges off that.
Yeah. You're pushing them, but you're supporting them at the same time, which is...
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
And does it create, I think our listeners would want to know, does it create an awful lot of work for you in terms of risk assessments and forms and all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes?
There is that, yes, absolutely. And that's become a bigger part. We've always done a risk assessment, but as the university has updated its policies on students being outside, off campus in general, including overseas, that has brought in a more kind of formal paperwork element to what we do, which is fundamentally a good thing. I think, we've never had an incident on one of these trips. I think this further reduces the likelihood of that, and also I think there's a clearer plan now of what to do if there was some kind of unfortunate incident.
Yeah.
And there are challenges there because our paperwork isn't necessarily always compatible with how small organisations in developing countries are organised. So we have to think about that and get advice on that sometimes from the insurance office. And so our departmental health and safety coordinator has taken an increasingly kind of large role in this. So we need support from academics to advise students. So academics who have a second year tutor group are supporting their students through it, and will do the initial run through of the risk assessment forms and the other paperwork inside and outside of tutorials. And then the safety coordinator has the final say over them all. And we make it very clear to students that if they don't have a complete set of paperwork, then they are not going in their capacity as a student. They're going as an independent individual. And that means it means they're not insured. They won't get any money, and they can't submit the work for an assessment because they're just on holiday.
So none of them do that.
No. No. So they're well incentivized not to. And again, so while it can be a scramble and sometimes a little last minute, we get it all done. And so what we have had to do is have much better kind of recording of all these forms getting submitted. There's data protection issues there as well, which gets interesting. But we now have a pretty good system in place. And I think that now has been adopted by the Faculty International Student Mobility Bursary, which you probably know about as well. Okay. So they've adopted our procedure. And they now have a dedicated member staff, I think, is dealing with that, the paperwork for that.
Okay. Brilliant.
So, you've been doing this for a few years now. It's well embedded. The practice is there. So, what's next in terms of these study visits? Are you planning on embedding them in other programs, in other areas? Have you got any other plans?
Yeah, I'd like to. So I had responsibility for this, the major responsibility for this when I was a program director for marine biology, and I'm not doing that anymore. And I was also international opportunities advisor for our department. I'm not doing that anymore. So those jobs have been taken over by Jack and Rachel. I'm still involved with this because the third year module, which assesses the trips, is still led by me. So I'm now keen to try and roll out the trips as an option to BSc Environmental Science, which is the program that I am now leading. We've had to make a few changes. So at the moment, the trips were bundled in with another field course that marine biologists do in a large 30-credit module. So I've split that out, so the trip now sits in its own module, or the follow-up to the trip. And we'll hope to try and make that accessible to students on other programs as an option. Now, there are some cost implications of that, and I have to talk to the head of school about what that might mean. But I think that as an alternative to an overseas field course, which those environmental students have as an option to do, then I think it's a good option for them and something to consider alongside those field class options which they can go on. So that's my plan for it, and I've been talking to Rachel about that and how we make some of the materials available more online. So we have these workshops, which at the moment are basically lectures with a small amount of activity. So Rachel is working to putting the workshops as stream captures,
All right, yeah.
then with a drop-in session for questions and follow-ups. And that could be open, I think, to more students, and it deals with some timetabling complications.
Yeah, you're increasing your audience there, aren't you?
Other kind of just procedural bits and bobs. So we are at the moment kind of in the middle of making it a bit more standalone and accessible to other groups. And I think if I can get it into the environmental science program, then I can talk to the head of school about extending it out to other bits of the school. And the big one there would be our students in geography, where there are up to 200 of those guys, which is a huge number of students. And at that point, we would need more support in terms of dealing with the paperwork. But if you think about that as a subject, geography, it's a study of the world. So
they should be out in the world somewhere.
Yeah, and you can imagine they benefit from it. And I think to say our trip have already inspired to some degree these faculty international mobility bursaries, where students do similar trips but non-credit bearing. So it's a co-curricular rather than a curricular activity, which is great. But that I don't think is going to last forever. I think the funding for that, I'm not sure, is secured. So we're happy already that word is getting out there. I think the other challenge for us is something I mentioned earlier, and that's about, I think, really highlighting to incoming students and even sometimes current students what the value of this trip is and how it's better than some of the alternatives. And one of the examples I use is another institution. They go on a field class to an exotic location, but they're now taught by one of our students who did their overseas visit there and is now working there. So I think that's quite
that shows the difference.
I think so, but it's quite a subtle point to put over.
Okay, so you mentioned Greenpeace there. Can you just elaborate on some of the other host organisations?
Yeah, the students have now been to a pretty impressive, diverse range of organisations, and we don't particularly put any limits on where they go. So they've worked kind of shadowing at government institutions or research organisations, perhaps sponsored by government, university departments, and museums, aquaria, a whole range of different kinds of NGOs, some of which are just doing their own research programs, some of which take on volunteers every year, some of whom take paid volunteers, and there's a number of organisations that do that. And also even in industry as well, so organisations perhaps working in renewables, working in the marine environment, places doing fisheries, places doing ecotourism, so really like a huge range, and we don't really put any particular limit on that. What we encourage students to do is think, okay, what is it I want to find out more about? What am I interested in? What might I want to do linked to my research project? What have I not covered in the programme? What do I want to do in the future? And the best trips are very much driven by the purpose of the trip.
Yeah.
Why do they want to go rather than where do they want to go? So we say, what is it you want to study? What do you want to learn more about? Okay, well, what's an interesting or relevant place to highlight that issue? Or, maybe it's a problem with overfishing that they want to find out where that's an acute problem, or perhaps where somewhere that problem is being solved. Are they interested in pollution? Or is it particular, could be just a very esoteric kind of research project on an aspect of evolution that they want to find out more about.
Right.
So we say find a purpose, find a reason to go, then find a place to do that. They can take advantage of any contacts they might already have, or friends or family who are living or travelling overseas, and that's all acceptable as well. So we do try and keep it as open as we can.
Brilliant, thank you.
Brilliant, that's been really interesting, so thank you. We like to finish each podcast with 3 or 4 take-home tips that our listeners could reflect on in terms of their own personal practice. So do you have anything that you could share with us that we could think about further?
Yeah, I think so. I think the first thing is really important for I think firstly you as educators, and secondly the students, to think about the purpose of the visit. So at the large scale, what are you trying to achieve for the benefit of the students? What is it you want them to get out of it specifically? Is it work experience? Is it knowledge of a particular topic? How important is the global dimension explicitly in what you're trying to do? So I think about that when setting it up. And then when the students are planning their independent visits, again, really encourage them to think about the purpose of their trip. What do they want to get out of it? Do they want to learn a skill? Do they want to research a challenging issue? Do they want to get involved with development? Do they want to be doing pure research? Think about what they want to do and then find a way to achieve that. I think the second thing is that you have to kind of empower the students to do this. And that works both ways. You have to make them believe that they can plan this daunting task, and then also have confidence yourself as a staff member that they will get the job done. That they will do it, that they'll be motivated to do it, and they can be sort of trusted and allowed to do it. And that came as a surprise to me, but it is actually very impressive. And that's, I think, part of the strength of this. And that does link, though, to the third point, which is they do need support. You can't do it for them, otherwise it's not the same type of activity, but they do need ideas, they need inspiration, they need regular prompting to keep on top of it, they need solutions when they hit problems with communication with hosts. So that comes both from academic staff and professional services staff as well, and particularly when that comes to the more kind of formal paperwork elements. Yeah, so you need a plan when you start putting something like this together.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. That's been great.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
Hey, no worries. It's great. I'm more than happy to do it.
I really enjoyed that chat with Jonathan. There's lots in that I want to reflect on and think about in terms of my personal practice with students. One of the things that I really thought was helpful was the way that they've built global awareness and global engagement into the core curriculum. So this isn't something that students can opt into or opt out of, but actually everyone has to engage with this, and they're made aware of that right from the beginning in terms of the advertising and then Welcome Week as well. And I think that's great because through this course every single student is supported in terms of their engagement with ideas around wider global citizenship. It's not just something that's there for a select few.
Yeah, and my takeaway from that chat, that they put the emphasis on the student to arrange the trip in advance, which ensured that they were gaining the employability skills such as things like problem solving, project planning, time management. Also, it increased their confidence, which, no mean feat. On the back of the trip, they were also producing a portfolio in various formats such as vlogs or briefing papers. And that's something really tangible that they can show employers of proof of the skills gained during that trip and part of that degree that they've earned.
Yeah, you're right. And that's something that would be really helpful in terms of taking to future interviews to evidence their engagement. I think it's also really nice that they've made that kind of first contact with future employers as well by setting up some of the trips with people organizations that they talked about. So there's lots of really good employability links that they've made.
Definitely.
Well, there's lots there for us to think about and reflect on in terms of our future practice with students. If you'd like to take your thinking any further, we've added some helpful resources to the website on this specific podcast reading list. So please do access them and have a little look. You can find them at liverpool.ac.uk/the-academy/podcast. Also, we love to hear back from you, so please do let us know what you thought about this episode. If you're using some of these ideas in your practice already, or you're thinking about embedding some of this in your future practice, we'd love to hear back from you. So please do tweet us at Live Uni Academy. Also, you can contact us directly. You can find Matt at eLearnerMatt or myself at Alexandra_Owen, both on Twitter.
Yeah, and we're really grateful for those who have taken the time to review our show in your podcast provider's app. So if you've listened and enjoyed the episode, please rate, or even better, review the episode, as it really does help us get noticed, and therefore more people will find us as a result. Just one quick shout out for Skempy, who reviewed the show recently on Apple Podcasts. Skempy said, learning from other people's experiences is invaluable in the fast-paced context of higher education. This podcast introduces lots of different ideas on a variety of topics and provides a lovely stimulus to reflect on our own practice, which is exactly what we were trying to achieve. So that's a big thumbs up from us. Thank you, Skempy, for that review. That's all for now. We'll be back soon with another episode. So bye for now.